Every killer leaves something behind. A trace, a pattern, a mistake. Something they never thought would betray them. But investigators see what they don't. From a bite mark that exposed a murderer to a handwritten letter that sealed a killer's fate. These cases prove that no one can truly get away with murder. They may think they can outsmart the system, believing they would never be caught. But in the end, it wasn't luck or coincidence that exposed them. It was hard evidence. Welcome back to Prison Stories. Today, we will discuss some hard evidence that unmasks some of the world's most notorious serial killers. First serial killer is Albert Fish. Our first case takes us back to the early 20th century, when a seemingly harmless old man harbored one of the most disturbing secrets imaginable. Albert Fish, a predator hiding behind a mask of frailty, had evaded suspicion for years. But in the end, it wasn't an eyewitness or a confession that exposed him. It was a letter. In 1934, Grace Budd's mother received a chilling, handwritten letter. The details inside were horrifying. It described in graphic detail how her 10-year-old daughter had been kidnapped, murdered, and even cannibalized. But while Fish had taken precautions to remain anonymous, he overlooked one small yet crucial detail: the envelope he used to send the letter. Detectives examining the envelope noticed an embossed emblem from the New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. This was no random stationery. It belonged to a boarding house in Manhattan, where Fish had briefly stayed. Investigators questioned the landlady, who confirmed that an elderly man matching Fish's description had checked in but left weeks earlier. With this lead, the police launched a search for Fish. On December 13, 1934, Detective William finally tracked him down to a rooming house in New York City. When confronted, Fish didn't try to run. Instead, he calmly admitted to his crimes, marking the end of his decades-long spree of unspeakable horror. Jack Unterweger, a respected journalist, a reformed ex-convict, at least that's what the world believed. Jack Unterweger had convinced everyone that he was a changed man. But beneath the facade of literary success and redemption, he was still a predator. His downfall came from a signature detail, a distinctive knot that would ultimately link him to multiple murders across 2 continents. Unterweger was first convicted in 1974 for the brutal murder of an 18-year-old woman. While in prison, he reinvented himself as a writer, penning poetry and an autobiography that painted him as a man transformed. His work gained public attention, and intellectuals, including Austrian elites, campaigned for his release, arguing that prison had reformed him. In 1990, after serving just 15 years of a life sentence, he was freed, praised as a success story of rehabilitation. But soon after his release, sex workers began disappearing. Their bodies were later found strangled with their own bras, tied in an unusual, intricate knot. The murders weren't confined to Austria. Similar killings occurred in Czechoslovakia and even the United States. During a trip Unterweger took as a journalist, investigators noticed the same distinctive knot at multiple crime scenes. When forensic experts compared it to the knot used in Unterweger's original 1974 murder, the connection was undeniable. In 1992, authorities finally arrested him, and he was charged with 11 murders. After being sentenced to life without parole, Unterweger never faces punishment. Just hours after his conviction, he hanged himself in his prison cell, using the same type of knot that had sealed his fate. Andrei Chikatilo. For over a decade, Andrei Chikatilo roamed the Soviet Union, preying on women and children, later known as the Butcher of Rostov. Chikatilo was one of Russia's most prolific serial killers, responsible for at least 52 murders. He was careful and methodical, always staying one step ahead of the authorities. But in the end, It was forensic science that finally caught him. Investigators had little to work with. No eyewitnesses, no fingerprints, just a string of bodies left in remote areas. But there was one key clue: semen samples found on the victims. Soviet forensics determined that the killer had AB blood type, and when Chikatilo was briefly detained in 1984, police tested his blood. It came back as type A, so they let him go. For years, Chikatilo continued killing, confident that science had ruled him out as a suspect. But in 1990, forensic techniques had advanced. When he was arrested again, scientists tested not just his blood, but also his semen. And this time, they made a shocking discovery. Chikatilo had a rare medical condition where his semen and blood had different blood types. His blood was type A, but his semen was type AB, just like the killer's. This was the final piece of evidence investigators needed. After hours of interrogation, Chikatilo confessed to 56 murders, leading to a conviction and execution in 1994. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a master manipulator, a charming law student who used his wit and charisma to mask the monster within. He had escaped custody twice, leaving a trail of victims across multiple states. But despite all his careful planning and cunning, one small but crucial piece of forensic evidence would finally seal his fate: a bite mark. In January 1978, Bundy broke into Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Within minutes, he had brutally attacked 4 women, killing 2 of them. But in his frenzy, he made a critical mistake. He left a deep bite mark on the body of Lisa Levy. Forensic odontologists took plaster molds and detailed photographs of the bite and compared them to Bundy's teeth. His dental structure was distinctive and misaligned, with chipped and irregular teeth that created a unique pattern. When the molds matched the bite impression left on Levy's body, the evidence became irrefutable. During his trial in 1979, prosecutors presented the bite mark analysis to the jury. The moment Bundy's dental impression was shown in court, his fate was sealed. It was the first time bite mark evidence played a major role in securing a conviction. Bundy was found guilty and sentenced to death. After years of appeals, he was finally executed in 1989, his own teeth having played a key role in bringing him down. Wayne Williams. Between 1979 and 1981, Atlanta was gripped by fear as at least 28 black children, teenagers, and young adults were murdered. The case baffled investigators, and with pressure mounting, authorities were desperate for a breakthrough. In May 1981, police set up surveillance on the city's bridges, suspecting the killer was dumping bodies in the Chattahoochee River. Then, in the early hours of May 22nd, officers heard a loud splash beneath the bridge. Moments later, a Chevrolet station wagon sped past. The driver? Wayne Williams. At first, police had nothing solid to hold him on, but forensic scientists soon made a critical discovery. Microscopic fibers and dog hair found on several victims matched Williams' home, car, and family dog. A rare green carpet fiber found on multiple victims was traced to the carpeting in Williams' bedroom. Yellow fibers matched the interior of his car. Dog hair found on several bodies was consistent with hair from his German Shepherd, Sheba. This forensic evidence was so specific and rare that it tied multiple victims to Williams. He was arrested and convicted for 2 adult murders, but authorities believe he was responsible for many of the Atlanta child murders as well. Forensic science has come a long way, but sometimes it's the smallest details that bring down the most dangerous killers. No matter how careful these killers thought they were, in the end, it wasn't brute force or high-speed chases that took them down. It was hard evidence that spoke louder than any alibi. Thanks for watching Prison Stories. Until next time, stay safe. Let us know in the comments. Which of these cases shocked you the most? And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next story from the darkest corners of true crime.